And welcome to the One South Coast Business Connection. I'm your host, Jennifer Lorenzo, the Director of Communications and Marketing at One South Coast Chamber. And we have a very special guest joining us today. That is our COO of One South Coast Chamber, Rick Kidder.
Well, Jen, how are you? It's nice to see you.
I know. We haven't been back in studio for some time.
I know
it's
we
nice.
haven't. Mike and I have had a chance to do this, and Mike would be with us today, but he's battling a little bit of a bug. So you're stuck with the two of us.
That's all right. We'll have a good show.
We will.
So let's start off and talk about a meeting actually we had earlier this morning, our role in education, and I know we have a show on the radio every week too as well that we talk about education. What is our role in education and why is it so important to the business community and especially the Chamber of Commerce as a whole?
I think, Jen, what a lot of people don't realize is there is a direct connection, not even a dotted line, it's a solid line, between education, educational excellence, educational access, and the success of the business community. You don't want to look at it necessarily in this way, the way iron is actually something that you need to make steel, but the reality is children are our raw materials. Those children, as they go through their educational path, need to find the pathways that they can find that can help them succeed in life, but also to help our business community and to help the entire business community grow. So education is something that for us is something that is key to our ability to serve the business community well, serve our communities well, and that's really across the entire region, and allow for greater business success in the future.
And I know the youth are so important when it comes to early childhood, going back all the way, and then early college and pathways and things like that, because that's going to be our workforce of the future, and that's why the business community wants to invest so much in it. Exactly,
and it's funny, you think about early childhood, that's so far away from being in the workforce, but the reality is, and it's a sad reality, is that those kids who start behind stay behind. And it's very important for us that we increase the access of children to quality preschool programs that will allow them to hit the ground running when they get to elementary school and then further into secondary education. It's also important that our families have the opportunity to re-enter the workplace. And we've seen since the pandemic where a lot of families had to stay home and be with their kids while their kids were learning remotely or their preschool programs were closed, that a lot of kids ended up behind. And a lot of parents ended up not re-entering the workforce because they find themselves without slots, without places for early childhood education in particular. Plus, early childhood educators are among, sadly, our least paid professionals. Yet here they are with these young lives in their hands. And those young lives are extraordinarily important, not only for in and of themselves, but for the future of this region. That there are many, many classrooms for preschool that have not reopened because they can't staff them. And so it's very important that we advance early childhood education as an investment in our future going forward and for our workforce and for our business community.
I know one thing within the Education Committee this year in particular, and we always kind of switch gears a little bit every year. One year we kind of focus on early childhood, another year might be early college. This year, one thing that we learned from the committee is that they really wanted to get in touch with the school districts in the area, public and private, go into the schools and see what they were doing, what are their pathways, and then on the other hand, have the business community or the education community come in and see what's going on in their respective businesses.
You know, it is funny. You would think that we're all adults that we're talking about here. But there's a complete disconnect that one sees between the education community and the business community. And that disconnect actually begins with language. Educators have their own language, God knows. Business people have their own language, God knows. So it's vital that educators and business people get together and understand each other's needs, understand each other's challenges, where the business community can step in and help with the challenges, where the education community can step in and help with the needs of children going forward. Plus, where educators can have a context of relevance for what they're doing in the classroom. That's something that's so important. When you look at, I'm a recovering educator. And I say a recovering educator because it's a challenging job. And when I was teaching school, it was fascinating to me the degree to which people who were teaching school were hyper-focused on working with the kids. They were hyper-focused in meeting standards and
Testing,
preparing kids for MCAS and all of those things, that they never really stopped or allowed themselves the luxury of stopping to understand what that context of relevance could be. And so it's really important that teachers understand that what they do in the classroom, if they can cite a single example for a child as to why I'm learning this stuff,
Connection.
making that connection is vital.
Absolutely. All right, let's switch gears because we only have a
don't
very
want-
small period of time and we've got a
Okay.
lot of stuff to get in.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, the next thing on our agenda is arts and culture.
Arts and culture.
And that's a huge thing at the Chamber, a huge segment of what it is that we do.
It is.
Some people think, why is arts and culture so important to the Chamber and how does that drive the community and then the economy in the region?
And that's one where you actually can look at a dotted line that becomes a solid line too. It's really important to understand that the livability of a community is often defined by the arts and culture within it. When we talk about communities that are successful ones, and you point to this community as a successful one, what's one of the first things they talk about? They talk about educational institutions, they talk about symphony orchestras, they talk about theater, they talk about art, they talk about that embracing a beautification, a challenge that comes with art, open discussions that come as a result of that. And so the Chamber was instrumental in developing Fall River Arts and Culture Coalition, FRAC. And Ashley Okino has been on this show before. She's absolutely wonderful, and she's regularly on the show with Patty Rigo of Viva
yep.
Fall River. And both of them, either directly or indirectly, are working on arts and culture as economic development tools. And we look at them as such. We're going to be more attractive to a relocating company if our commitment to arts and culture is clear. We're going to be a more livable community for the residents who have lived here for years and years if they can look around them and see gorgeous artworks,
The murals,
statuary,
yes.
the murals, things of that kind that actually build a civic pride, and they also build a sense of well-being within the community. So arts and culture are vital to our ability to sell, as it were, our communities as places that businesses want to be and that people want to live.
In our business community, especially here in Fall River, right where Viva is, and FRAC, they've really embraced it because most of the people that sit within the FRAC committee are leaders
Yes.
of the banks, hospitals, things like that. So they realize the economic impact that this will have in the future as well.
They do indeed. They get it, and that's something that isn't always the case. I mean, we've been pleased in New Bedford. New Bedford had kind of a head start.
Renaissance a little bit.
Yeah, a little
Yep.
bit of a renaissance on this, and has been embraced has embraced just as Fall River has an arts and culture plan. There are a lot of opportunities for artists also to learn business skills, which is something that's really quite interesting. Without getting too much into the left brain, right brain kind of thing, artists tend to be wonderful at what they do, but they are not necessarily good small business people, and they don't look at themselves as such. But in fact, an artist is a small business person. It's someone who may or may not, he or she may or may not be working by themselves, but they're trying to sell their art. They're trying to get their works out there. That takes marketing skills. It takes organizational skills. It takes accounting skills. It takes a lot of things that artists, in many senses, without being overly generalizing, artists don't want to think about.
Right.
They want to create. And business people and artists can get together, and we can give some of the skills to those artists that they need in order to be successful at what they do.
And I think one aspect of that is the Viva Fall River pop-up shop, and it's right on South Main Street.
Yep.
A lot of people might not even know it's there yet, but it's Mother's Day is coming up. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Absolutely.
Commencement, graduations are coming
Yes.
up, and you go in there and there's such a plethora of different objects, pictures and artwork and jewelry and plants and flowers and all kinds of different things made right here in Fall River. But like you said, if they didn't have a storefront, now they do.
Right. And in any time that we can provide a maker, a creator with some venue in which they can distribute what they make and sell what they make, we're improving our economy, we're improving our community, and we're doing something that a lot of communities would love to be able to do, which is support their own art, their own artists and makers. So that's something that's very important for us moving forward, because we see Fall River as a community that, as it embraces arts and culture even more, is going to become infinitely more vibrant, infinitely more exciting, infinitely better place for businesses to grow.
Yeah. And if you want a list of their events, I know I don't have their event list in front of me, but Patty does a great job with social media. Just look at Viva Fall River on Facebook or Instagram. I know they have a We Heart Fall River event coming up in May in a few weeks. Can't believe we're already in May. It's amazing how time goes. And then, of course, Ashley as well, and she has all the information if you just type in Fall River Arts and Culture.
You know, and it's interesting. We had a meeting of the Massachusetts Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, which is kind of our state organization. And we had chamber execs from across all parts of the state. And we put a panel discussion together that I was happy to moderate that included Ashley, and included someone in arts and culture in East Hampton, Mass, and included someone who works in arts and culture on the Cape as panelists. And they were all telling different versions of the same story of how important arts and culture is, not only there, but as an economic driver. And with the work that Patty is doing, with the work that Ashley is doing, and a lot of the work they do is in tandem because there's crossover. With the work that they're doing, I think you're going to see that kind of life here become infinitely better and stronger.
Absolutely. All right, switching gears again.
Okay, whatever you want.
A new topic.
I'm in your hands,
Strategic planning.
Ah, yes.
That's a big word. So I know that we did have a strategic planning kind of session planned for when we first got together as the SouthCoast Chamber and Bristol County Chamber of Commerce. That kind of went out of the window because COVID happened.
That little pandemic thing, right.
So a couple of years it was put on hold. So now we have come back to that at the beginning of this year. We have met a number of times. We had a great kind of leader of that panel with us all at the table, and she was wonderful. I'm remiss on her name right
Sue
now.
McQuaid was her name. She was wonderful.
Yeah, she was great. So I know moving forward, we're going to be kind of changing some things and some of how the positions work at the chamber and some of our focus. So what are we kind of looking at as far as the strategic planning is concerned, and what do you see happening in the future? And it will take a while.
And
this is
will.
A couple year plan.
Yeah, this is a 2 or 3 year plan, and it needs to be. But one of the things that, as you would mention, we came together in January of 2020. 3 months later, everybody's doors were locked. And we found ourselves in a completely different world. So we never had the luxury of being able to plan the way we wanted to plan when we came together. But it is interesting, and you know, it's an old joke, but it's true. If you don't know where you're going, you're really never going to get there. And so a strategic plan for a business, and in our case for the chamber, is really designed around setting up a roadmap. And that roadmap is how to make the organization perform its mission and vision better. So you look at it from that context, and we kind of worked as a group. We worked in small groups. You and I got to share a small group. We worked as a group, and we worked in small groups to try to isolate challenges that we saw, strengths of the organization that we saw, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's called a SWOT analysis. And from that, we've been able to emerge with kind of 4 major goals. And the 4 major goals for the chamber itself are that we've got to recognize, number one, that we are not a little tiny chamber anymore. We are the 2nd largest chamber in the Commonwealth. The only chamber larger than we is Worcester, and the reason that they are larger is that they actually have 6 affiliates with whom they have contractual relationships. And those 6 affiliates, when you add their members together, they're a little bit larger than we. But we're actually even bigger than the Boston Chamber. So when you start looking at chambers of commerce that are large and small, we need to start to model the design of the organization, the execution of our programs and services around the best practices of those large chambers. Because we are a different kind of organization now. We have roughly 1,500 members. We've dropped a little bit from that number during the pandemic, but we are still a considerable, quote, force to be reckoned with, and we are looking to continue to grow. So part of that is actually saying, okay, let's finally realize we're a big kid. And as such, make sure that we continue to service our members even though we are a larger organization, which leads us to the second goal. And the second goal was to increase member engagement and value at all levels while continually increasing the member base. There's an old book out there called Grow or Die. We want to grow. Like every other business, we would like to grow, not only grow our bottom line, but we're a nonprofit, but grow our ability to serve the business community. And that growth comes from our membership. I think a lot of people don't realize that chambers of commerce are not financial extensions of the cities and towns that they serve.
Some people don't realize that.
They don't know that. We are actually a private organization, a 501c6. The vast majority of our revenues are derived completely from our membership, not from cities and towns. So we want to increase our member engagement. That is not to say that on an average business after hours, where we may have 100 people or 120 people, we don't want 1,500 necessarily, because we wouldn't know what to do with them.
That would be a lot, yeah.
But we have to find lots of different ways to segment our market to make certain that we're serving every member well.
Engaging everyone, yes.
Exactly. As you well know, in fact, you and I discuss this a lot, the Chamber is a bizarrely generic organization. We have everything from a tiny one-person business to the largest employers in the region.
Hospitals, banks, things like that.
Banks on one side, and Joe's Shoe Shine Parlor on the other. And when you have everything in between, it's really easy to look at them and say, okay, they're all members of the chamber, so they all need the same thing.
And
well, they don't.
No. Different services for each one, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we believe that we're going to increase our member engagement while we're also, by segmenting the market and making sure that our small businesses, which make up 90% of our membership, that our small businesses get the majority of our attention and that we serve them well and help them meet their mission. So that was the second one. And then there's a lot of stuff that comes out of that, a lot of activities that come out of those things. The third goal was to engage in economic development activities in partnership with existing entities, public and private. Now, that one is a little more vague, but you look at it and say, are we going to be the primary business attraction entity for the region? No, those things exist. Are we going to be the primary business retention organization for the area? Probably not, but we have a part to play in each of those things, in business attraction and retention and expansion. And those entities, sad to say, we're a small region, but they don't always talk to each other. Where the chamber has a unique and wonderful role is that it has the ability to be a convener, to bring together those people so that we can work together towards the economic betterment of the region as a whole. So that's kind of what that goal implies. The last of the four major goals is to safeguard the financial stability of the organization itself.
Which everyone wants to do, especially these days.
Exactly. We are fortunate that we have some cash reserves, but you never know what's going to happen in the economy. You never know what's going to happen in in government that could adversely affect the way that you function. So we have to make sure that we grow our reserves, that we act in a fiscally responsible manner, and that we do those things knowing the only reason that we want to keep the organization going is that it continues to serve, and to keep that mission forward instead of saying it's all about us. But it can't be about the business community and serving the business community if we're not strong and healthy. So those are the 4 big goals. Now each of those is divided into all sorts of objectives. Each of those is going to be each of those objectives.
More objectives.
More tactics, more things, and then timelines attached to that, so that over the next several years, you're going to see some substantial changes rolled out, but rolled out in such a way that we've done it and haven't killed ourselves in the process or confused the membership.
Right.
So that's the big parts of strategic planning.
Now,
for
I
the
know
chamber.
something that was involved in the strategic planning process, and I know this wasn't on our sheet of items to discuss today,
that's fine.
but is retention
Yes.
for our members. And that means going back and servicing the new ones and talking with them, and what would you like to see, or maybe what could we do differently to have
Right.
engaged you a little bit more? And we have somebody that's going to be helping us with that.
We do. We are fortunate that we have made a new hire. Ian Abreu, who worked at the Chamber
Right.
for many years. In fact, he just got his 10-year plaque for having served the Chamber for that period of time. Ian has gone on to become a small business owner himself.
Yeah.
He has a family business that was called Silmo Syrup. They made coffee syrup. As we know, coffee syrup in this region is second only perhaps to beer. In its being adored. And so he's gone back into that business, has reopened it, and is in the process of, and by the way, he's joined the Chamber.
Yes,
so
he
that's
has.
a
He's
good
doing
thing.
very well, too.
Well, he got very smart
Congratulations,
about it. He joined the Chamber while he was still the head sales guy, so he got commission on it, too. But we've been fortunate to hire a wonderful individual named Clifford Arthur East. And Clifford Arthur East is joining us. He's actually currently working at David's Bridal, but he had been a trainer at Marriott for a number of years. He got his BA in accounting, actually, from UMass Dartmouth in 2015. And we're thrilled that he is joining the staff. And he's going to be, and we've changed the nature of the job
Yes.
a little bit. So it's not yes, it is about acquiring new members, because that's something that's always a goal for us. But he's going to be partly compensated on the retention of our members as well. Mike and I talked about this, I think, in an earlier show, but it's worth repeating. If you look at chambers of commerce, by and large, and this is an amazing statistic, of the people who join in any given year, only 50% of those come back for year 2.
Yes.
And the other fact that's really kind of interesting, if they've been with us for 3 years, they're generally with us for life.
Life. And sometimes we don't hear from a lot of those
And sometimes we don't hear from a lot of them. But we know that getting them past that first couple of years is something that's really important, because people join the Chamber with their own set of expectations.
Right.
And those expectations might be, well, if I join the Chamber, my business will triple by Thursday. Well, and that doesn't happen.
Have to engage a little bit.
You do. It takes some work on your part. And then some join saying, look, I know that that's not the case, but I know that if I build my networks and I go to your events and I do the things that you do, that I'll be able to do that. And then doing their job gets in the way, particularly for small business people. Because a small business person is the CEO, is the CFO, is the janitor,
Yep, marketing,
communication, social media, you
yes.
name it. It is everything. And then attending a chamber event, they go, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I can't do that. And so we want to make sure that we get these new members engaged,
Yep.
so that they stay with us. And that's good for both the organization and it's good for the
Yeah,
businesses.
you want everyone that joins to have a positive experience.
Exactly. That's the goal. That is the goal. So what we'd like to do is break into that nationwide stat of 50% of new members don't stay with you, because we want to serve them. We want to serve them well.
Absolutely. All right, I know we have just a few minutes left. See how fast the time goes,
Oh
I
my
know.
God.
I did want to mention, because I know that this was a big thing in the past month that has come out, and we did want to touch on, is the Chamber Policy Network.
Yes.
And how our involvement with other chambers around the state can help our push at the state level for
Yes.
some things.
It's very important that small business people rarely have a voice in government. Again, we went back to the janitor, the CEO, and all of that. They're working so hard. They're not following legislation. It's hard for them to follow legislation, but they're subject to it.
Right.
The organization, the Chamber, actually has a role to play in advocacy to support the business community in helping them meet their goals. And so we have actually joined forces with the 10 largest chambers in the Commonwealth. This is one of those things where we get to act like a big kid. And the 10 largest chambers in the Commonwealth have joined forces. They represent geographically pretty much the entire state. And we're going to be speaking as one voice at the State House.
Yes.
That's something that's extremely vital for us because we're a small enough organization, we're a big enough organization that we want a voice and have some clout. We're a small enough organization that we can't have somebody on Beacon Hill every day.
No.
So we've joined this policy network that was initially put together by Jim Rooney of the Boston Chamber, and that organization is going to help us get more business-friendly legislation. Now, why would Boston want to do it? Because they're the 800-pound gorilla. They want to do it because they're sick of hearing on Beacon Hill, "You're Boston, you don't have any problems."
Now with all of
Now
us.
we'll have the whole state that will be weighing in through the largest chambers. So we're very excited about that.
That's great. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some of our events that are coming up because we have a full
Yes.
slate. We just finished up a whole month of events.
We've been event insane.
So we have coming up here, we just had a business after hours last evening. New Bedford State of
Oh,
the
that was
City
it. That was at Toyota.
Yes,
Dartmouth.
that was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, the food.
It was wonderful. On the go catering, I believe.
On the go catering, yes, and they're just joined the chamber
Yes,
as well.
out of Mattapoisett. So that was a great event. We have coming up New Bedford State of the City next week
That's
with
right.
John Mitchell. That's always a big event for us, about
It is.
500 people.
Yes, in fact, it's the second largest State of the City address in the Commonwealth,
That's amazing.
behind Boston, and it's a luncheon for 500. Where Mayor Mitchell will be able to outline his goals and
The upcoming year.
and of course pat himself on the back
Yes.
because that's what mayors are good at.
Exactly. And then Bank 5 Business After Hours, that is going to be in their Somerset branch location this
But
year.
that's going to be special.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be really nice.
And there's, I think, a Yeti giveaway for that. So bring a business card. And we also have a women's lunch.
Yep.
The lunch has become a great event. We usually sell out all the women in the area. If they want to come, just mix and mingle for lunch. It's a great event. That's going to be at Pub 65. And then later on this month, I think it's the following week, I don't have the date right in front of me, Danielle North is coming for our
that's
women's forum.
On May 24th.
May 24th, okay.
Those of you who wake up in the morning as I did, I used to wake up in the morning every morning with Danielle North. And as odd as that may sound, it's actually, she was on my TV screen on WPRI Channel 12 doing the news. She had been there for a number of years and has left Channel 12 and begun her own community development corporation. And she's going to be our guest speaker at our annual Women's Forum, and that should be wonderful.
That's coming up again on the 24th, and that's at White's. And then one more thing, I know we're pretty much out of time, is our legislative lunch with all of our local legislators on June 9th. That's at Rachel's.
And that's a wonderful opportunity to talk to your legislators and get your point across.
There you go. And if you'd like more information about all of these events and other ones, visit onesouthcoast.com and just click on events.
Fantastic.
All right. It's been a pleasure joining us again for One South Coast Business Connection.